It's starting. It's starting. There you go. Okay. Well, hello everyone. I'm back. Welcome back to my channel. So I have somebody back with me. His name is Damian, my friend.
Hey.
So you guys know about them. You know, we've already talked about being gay and black and being gay and black. And now we're looking at another discussion, which I find is very interesting. And I think sometimes we talk about this kind of issues when an artist does something crazy. So we're talking about Lil Nas X and his video Montero, and it's quite controversial, right? And so I'm not gonna I think most of you guys saw the video. If you haven't, then go look at it. If you are really religious and you are Christian and your faith is strong, you can watch it. It might hurt you, not hurt you. It might what I'm trying to say, right? So
Trigger
it might
or,
trigger you.
or upset, yeah.
It might upset you. There you go. Thank you, Damien. It might upset you, right? But I find this opens up a discussion, and I think it's a discussion that I realize not a lot of people. Well, okay, instead of going through it, I'm just gonna start the conversation with Damien. So, Damien, you saw the video, right?
Yes, I did. Oh gosh.
What?
I don't know how many times I had to pick my jaw up from the ground.
Yeah.
Just I mean, stunning visuals. Let's just start there. Absolutely amazing visuals. Very intentional video is what I'd call it.
Yeah.
There is nothing that was done without expecting the response that has, been gleaned from this film. Or, well, I mean, yeah, I'd call it a film because there's so much to unpack in it. So yeah, a lot of emotions that I had. I think so many of us, especially for one, seeing a black gay man being at the forefront of conversation in pop music
Yeah.
is to me a testament of the times. And I think it's something that we haven't really seen for a very long time. I mean, we've really seen it more so with white gay men, of the years past. They've had more of an ease in the industry of an in, so to speak. But for Little Nas X to come in and do what he's done and do it the way he's done it, is very profound.
Mm.
And I'm very much aware of the the vitriol around it,
Yeah.
especially coming from those who are Christian. I grew up in the church, so I have my own thoughts about it, and I'm very much aware of the upheaval that everyone is going through over the video. And I mean, we all have a right to feel what we feel. I think, religion is such a sacred thing, and it
Yeah.
should be respected. We should have the right to uphold and maintain our connection with the divine in whichever avenue we choose to do so.
Mm.
But we cannot negate the fact that easily the most problematic, most polarizing religion has been Christianity.
Yes.
Um, Christianity has been at the helm of colonialism. It's been at the helm of racism, and it's been at the helm of homophobia,
Yes.
and sexism. I could go on and on. When you think about Christianity, you see white patriarchy big and bold.
Mm.
And so we can't have a conversation about this without having a conversation about the presence of that and the impact of that white patriarchy through the veil of Christianity
Yes.
on the wider society.
Yeah. It's interesting because just talking about you being a Christian, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'm cleaning my glasses at the same time.
Raised Christian. I don't particularly subscribe to it anymore. I mean, I do. I respect it. yeah, but I don't worship in the way I used to.
Mm,
I, because church has never been a safe space for me.
there we go. So my
Yeah.
question, of course, was how has religion affected you as a gay man, as a young gay man? You were growing up into, and then you went to church every Sunday. I mean, you know,
Mm. I remember when I got this question, I thought, does Raf really want me to go there? Because I think, and I'm going to be a bit raw about it, of course, minding my language. But the Christianity and my relationship with it as somebody who identifies as queer but is in a gay marriage has affected me tremendously, and it's a kind of trauma and conditioning that I've been subjected to for so long, for decades, that I'm
yes,
still healing from and still unpacking. It has affected my sex life. It has
okay,
affected me in so far as I will enjoy the pleasure of it and quickly want to rid myself of the feelings of what I just encountered. Because
yeah,
somehow this the subconscious child who was a subject of fear mongering
yeah,
um, rises up in that moment. I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? You just did something bad.
yeah,
I struggle to even allow myself to revel in the ecstasy and intimacy of that moment and what was created, with the coming together of two souls in a physical way. I find that I struggle with it because immediately afterward I'm just like, okay, that's done. Can we just not can we just pretend it never happened?
yes,
um and this is perhaps the most vulnerable thing I can share because of the impact of that kind of Christian mindset and the fear mongering that was rooted in Christianity. Also, we look at how, again, just talking about white patriarchy and how that shows up in black men and black men who ascribe to this white patriarchy. And so we see where there's so much homophobia in terms of it, there's internal homophobia within the community, where
mm,
particularly black men have more seemingly more hate towards femme black men,
yeah, yeah,
because for them they're trying to subscribe to the notion of man and woman, and if we're to really pare it down, Adam and Eve. And
yes,
so for them, it's this weird space of continuously navigating roles and gender roles, and a large part of it comes from just the learned homophobia, that an internal homophobia that a lot of us still hold.
yeah,
Um, and it requires a lot of healing. What I saw through that video was Little Nas X reconciling with that trauma in an artistic way, and also publicly, openly setting himself free of the chains that he's been bound to. The narrative, which is you are doomed to hell. Uh,
yes,
and it's a powerful thing to be able to say, well, um, if that's what you think I am, if that's where you think I'm going, then I will go there and go there fiercely and own it. uh, in so many ways, we have seen where um, black gay men have taken over the narratives that they used to be teased about in high school. They used to be called sissy,
yes,
um, and girl and all that stuff. Now they've taken it on, and now it's a part of their lingo, because now for them, in order to combat the the constant pain and harm inflicted upon their minds and bodies, what they end up having to do is taking that thing that was used to harm them and making it into the thing that they're now taking ownership of.
yes,
So I'm gonna sissy that walk. Growing
yeah,
up being called a sissy would cause me to cry. But then now we're seeing where a lot of gay men are now owning that word sissy, um, because it gives them a renewed sense of power. It empowers them, and rightfully so. And
yeah,
that's just a natural cycle of what will happen in a lot of ways, where folks are victimized and then decide that the very weapon that is used to kill them, they're going to wield it and make it,
Yeah.
their. Yeah. So that's my thought
Mm.
on the impact of it. And personally, that's how it's really impacted me. It's that constant internal dialogue and fear, of the little boy who was growing up and used to sit, recognizing what was happening, to me and my attractions, and feeling as though my life wasn't worthy and I'm going to be, the Lord is going to smite me
Mm.
because of these feelings. No, regardless, completely erases everything else that I was, all of the
Yes.
good that I was. That thing is that stain, is that lingering demon that exists within me that I just can't get rid of. Thankfully, I've set myself free of that. But traces of it still remains, and that's why I made mention of what it's like, even sexually, to allow myself to go there, to be free, to fully, embrace that. And then somehow, somewhere along the line, at the end of it, I'm like, I'm still feeling shame about
Yeah.
my body and about what my body has just done, you know?
Mm. And I think it's trauma. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's trauma. I mean, for me, I when I grew up, uh, luckily I'm from a household where religion wasn't, at the forefront. So
It was opposite for me. It was very much at the forefront.
yeah, so for me it was like my dad was religious, but my dad is religious, but no, he's not really religious. He's on the mend about it. My mom is religious, but it was never, you know, s- we went to church on Sundays. And I think what happened is that, like I was kind of safe in my household in a way. I was still very effeminate, right? People would say, back where I was from, people would say camp, you're camp. And I think when I would show myself at church, as a kid, I would walk in my, effeminate ways, if people can say. And I think some people would look at me and you could see the discomfort. As a young kid, you don't really understand what it is and everything. But I could see the discomfort. And when I would go to school and I would hear about, homosexuals and how it's evil, it's a sin and everything. And I never quite understood it. And then I grew up and I was like, I understood, oh, I'm gay. And the first thing I said was, I'm gonna go to hell.
Hmm.
So it's just, the trauma, sometimes you don't, it's very like you don't compute what it is.
Yeah, it's subtle, and it seeps in.
It seeps in because the moment you grow up, you're like, oh, the moment you understand what everything
What
is
it
all
is.
about,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm going to hell. So I think what it is, like, it's really trauma it's traumatic what a gay man, I would even say more black gay man,
Black, and yeah.
yeah, go through,
Because
especially,
the church has very much been the cornerstone of the Black community in
yes,
so many ways across diasporas.
yes,
Even on the continent of Africa, um, to the Caribbean, to North America. But
yes.
again, if we were to really look at where that came from, a lot of that kind of, that version of Christianity was imposed upon us through colonization
There we go.
as
Yeah.
a means to control.
Yes.
And so, we think about the control over women's bodies and women's agency. And then also we consider the control over men and their expression of self and who
Yeah.
they are expected to be. The limited gender roles really are rooted in this white patriarchy that has long been spreading worse than COVID-19. Like, that's a virus that we just I'm yet to figure out what the vaccine is for that, other than just taking up space and doing the stuff that we're doing now, like in this case, with Little Nas X deciding to do a video that speaks so boldly, in some cases heretically, to this
Yeah.
problem. We're constantly told we're going to hell.
Going to
and
hell.
it's a
Yeah.
sin, and we need fixing and therapy, um, because what we feel is unnatural. I mean, thankfully, my mother still loves me, but it's a weird relationship because she wants nothing to do with my husband. Doesn't want to have conversations with him particularly. She doesn't ask about him. It's just one of those things where she knows, but she's just it's just don't ask, don't tell. We won't have a conversation about it. And then it also is the reason I am currently estranged from my child, because I did, again, being queer, so I was never really defined by any one desire. I knew I liked girls and guys, but I
Yeah.
just couldn't make sense of that, or make, and even worse, make that make sense to everybody else who was telling me, you need to choose, you need to stop acting this way, you need to stop walking around like this and doing
Mm.
all of that. But I did have a child 12 years ago, and we're estranged because of her mother's bitterness towards me, and my decision coming out of that very toxic relationship um, to go the path that felt more connected to my own truth.
Yes.
Um, so I'm still paying the price for that. I'm still healing from even that, because what she uses now, since our relationship ended, she's found God. And what she uses now is that's the veil that she comfortably uses, the moral pedestal that she stands on now, as to
Yes.
why my child is unable to visit me here in the US.
Mm.
And it's just something that I'm not going to fight anymore. I think I had been fighting with it for a very long time, and I've decided to set myself free of it, because what that does is re-traumatize me every time,
Yes.
and I'm trying to heal from it. So when I saw it, I mean, there were moments that I thought the video was extreme. Um, Not so much the video as is the whole conversation that that came afterward around, like, these sneakers that were being
Yes.
promoted. Like, that was taking it too far for me, because I don't mess with stuff like that. I don't do the whole 666, like, mm-mm. Like, I leave that stuff alone. I'm not trying to conjure up demons or anything like that. I believe there are dark forces. I believe dark forces exist within a lot of us.
Yes.
And we have to work to rid ourselves of those dark forces. But those dark forces, to me, are the kind of dark forces that impose upon other people's choices.
Yes.
A dark force to me is not a dark force if I choose to be with somebody else who is a consenting adult in a particular way. To me, what is dark is when you are going to impose your personal views
Very
upon my body, my life, my choices. A dark force is when you decide to take my life, when you
mm.
decide to limit my choices and my options. That is dark, that is evil. um,
Yes.
what two men do and two women do, or non-binary folk do, is their business, because they're not affecting anybody else. And this whole idea of, getting into the minds of young people, and getting into the education system, the point is, we have to start really interrogating how much harm we're doing even in school, and the indoctrination through church, and how it passes on even in the education system. Again, the education that we almost all of us are subjected to was organized by white patriarchy. Like,
Mm.
the books that we're given, the history we're told, is very skewed in a lot of ways. The curricula that we have to subscribe to is skewed to a particular way, where it centers whiteness. And that's a whole different conversation to be had, but that's an extension of this conversation, I feel.
Yeah. It is an extension. I feel because that's why when talking about the about Lil Nas X video, I really want us to really focus on the realities we go through, right? Because
Yeah.
after we get into the video, but it's important to show the trauma, because I've realized the way the backlash has been, well, the way people have backlash about it, mostly Christians, and No, a lot of black Christians, of course, black
Yeah.
straight Christians, the
I
way,
have thought about that too, the backlash,
yeah,
but go on.
yeah, it's like the way it's been sent, they've managed to center themselves
Hmm.
in the, I don't know if I'm making sense, the way they've managed to say, as a Christian, I feel triggered because, you have to not to respect people's religion,
Right.
and it's for me, it's something that, we've had no choice as black gay individuals to do, we've had because we grew
It's
up
very
in,
convenient to me that they're saying that,
yeah,
considering that Christianity is literally one of the most, again, it imposes itself on so many spaces. It
so many,
imposes itself on our
yes,
bodies, it imposes itself on our minds, it imposes itself on geographical borders.
yes,
Um, when you think about missionary missions, when you think about um, how Christianity expanded with empires,
yes,
how dare you sit there and conveniently want to talk about being triggered, or the freedom of your religion, when your religion literally is the root of a lot of what we go through in this world.
yes,
It's a root problem of a lot
yeah,
of what is happening when you feel as though your religion is supreme, again tied to white supremacist delusion and white patriarchy. What that does is it continues to spread, and it takes over, and it doesn't make space for other conversations.
there we go.
And so
It
now
does
that
not.
you are being um, pushed and encouraged, forcibly in some cases, to check yourself and to realize the harm that you're doing. This is the response. This is the quote unquote backlash. I do have thoughts about it,
Yeah,
as well, in terms of those folks who say, because there are those who are in the who teeter in the middle of it, of the conversation, like, well, I don't have any problem with gay people, but that's too much, again, because for them, we are too loud, we are too much, we're beginning to take up too much space. And apparently what should happen is, if you are gay, if you are queer, non-binary, you should just, okay, be weird and be off to the side,
there we
just
go.
stay in the shadows. You really don't need to take up space, you don't need to be at the forefront. I'm okay with you, but you don't get to be at the front or have a seat at the table. Sounds very familiar, sounds very racist. If you think about it, it's the same kind
Yeah,
of sentiment, wherein, have your freedom, but you don't get to have a seat at the table.
yes,
And
and
again,
that's,
you see the connections.
yeah, it's like you said, the connection. That's why I'm saying again, I'm from the mindset where I personally think that, your religion, it's if it's something that makes you strong, that makes you proud, that makes you happy, that
Hmm.
gives you a sense of, deliverance, I don't know,
Yeah,
then I will tell you, go for it.
right, of
I'm
course.
happy for you,
It's a
like
personal journey.
personal journey, and I went to church. I don't go to church anymore, but I used to go to church every Sunday. I was extreme. I was religious. I was like, amen. I
I
believe
had
that.
my moments. I had my
And,
moments. It all changed when I went to my first church camp, and I saw this. I'll tell you that story afterward, but go on.
yeah, so it's funny. Like I really believed, and I would pray every night, before going to bed. I wouldn't pray before eating, but I really believed, So I understand um why it would impact you, but then this just shows something that I've always said. We are there are there are different individuals in living in this world, right? And we
Mhm.
all have a personal journey, right? And we all have things that happens to us that impact us in a way that, we see things differently, right? So when I hear Christians, I will say black Christians because I've been looking at, at the backlash and everything, and
Mhm. It's
my
mainly black folks.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, so white
I
people
mean,
too,
there
but
have been a few white preachers, literally, who've built a whole sermon around it. But
yeah,
I think so much of the harm for us as black queer and gay folk really comes from our own, which
from
is
a,
sad.
Yeah, and that's why and that's why I'm like the fact that you are talking in this way shows for me, and then maybe I'm wrong, but shows that what we are going through is not as important.
Hmm.
You know, I was impacted as a Christian. This is horrible. Oh, you're gonna go to hell. Like Jesus come back into, you need Jesus in your life. All those saying, right? Without understanding where that person, Lil Nas, and not just Lil Nas, a
Everyone
lot
likes him.
everyone like queer, black, we're gonna talk black man, or and also queer black women also,
Mhm.
just the reality, the violence that we had to be subjected to. Some of us,
Erasure.
yeah, some of us was the erasure, and some of us it was, psychological. Some of us was physical, I mean, the things I would hear when I was young, as a black gay man, and then when you see Lil Nas doing what he does, and you are surprised by it,
Hmm.
shows how you only view your reality, but you don't see how your reality has impacted another person's reality that
Yeah,
will cause him to go and do what he's doing now. Am
to
I making
respond in
sense?
that way, right? Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I always said that. I'm happy you said that because that's a sentiment I've always held where when I think about when someone is oppressed for so long and limited in their expression of self and being, like for instance, you think of a preacher's kid. The
yeah,
preacher's child is usually the one who's the most who's the most problematic because they've had to stay in this very rigid, stringent, way of being for so
yeah,
long that whenever they do get any semblance of freedom, they just it's like you hold them back so much they just fly, just go flying to the other side, you
yes,
know. And I think that's what happens if there isn't a duty of care throughout just raising children, whether it be in the home or at church or at school, to understand that limiting a child more times than not will lead to them doing the very thing that you don't want them to do.
yes,
My mother's worst fear about me came true, which was, for me to be queer. And
yes,
so any interaction I had with a man when I was a child, she was always guard up. She never wanted. My father was interested in me doing ballet, and she was staunchly against it.
yeah,
Remember coming home once with a pencil, and she was like, "Where did you get that pencil from?" And I said, a boy gave it to me in class, and she flipped because she just didn't. And she always used to say, again, the fear mongering. One of these fine days, one of them is going to rub your bottom, and just like, why are you talking about my butt? And why is that your first, thought? Because there's such fear around it for her. I don't know if she feared for my life or she feared for the shame that would come, but I
mm,
think it's also obvious to her that I was different.
yes,
She was a seamstress. I was very much into what she was doing, very much into fashion, and also very effeminate. I think I'm far less effeminate now than I was then, because
yeah,
trust me, the 10-year-old Damian, 9-year-old Damian was very much like, and all of that. And by the time I was transitioning to high school, I literally spent a summer learning how to be a bit more macho so that I could survive high school.
there we
So I
go.
stood in the mirror and I'm like, yo, yeah. And it's just all of these quirks that I would see guys do, that I started to employ as a means of surviving high school. I couldn't
Mm,
keep it up for long because I ended up having a whole bunch of female friends in high school. And by the time I'm around them, I'm cackling and carrying on and doing the most. And it was very obvious that I was just not one of the boys. And
yeah,
I kept struggling to be like them and to be appreciated and validated by them. Um, but it just, yeah, to this day, I still struggle with relationships with men. And it's because of just the fear that my mother instilled in me of any kind of interaction with a man. And again, this is where she doesn't understand that because she was so fearful of my interaction with men, and she was more comfortable with me, having interaction with girls. She didn't realize that I was learning so much from the young women who were my friends,
Yes.
Um, and it was completely counterintuitive to what she was trying to prevent. But regardless, I always knew this side of me existed since I was young. Always had a fascination with both men and women. And here I am today, still healing. And
Yeah.
that's in some cases, in some way, I think that's a bit of a tragedy to still be healing, from all of that.
Yeah, and that's why I really like what you say, something I also did a lot. I mean, right now I'm less effeminate, just like you. I'm less effeminate than I
Mhm.
was when I was young. I Before I would play with Barbies, I
Oh,
would,
oh, I
I
love dogs.
you know, I
I got
would
quite a few beatings for playing with dolls. Yeah, because
oh
I had female cousins in my home, and they were younger than me. They never knew how to dress dolls correctly, and
yeah,
I'm just like, you know what, give it to me. Let me braid the hair. I'll show you how it's supposed to look. And when my
yeah,
mother would come home, she'd see the doll fully dressed in a gown and the hair braided, and she would look at me and she's like, I know it's not your 5-year-old cousin who did this. I told you not to touch dolls, and I have my bouts of beatings, but it is what it is. I found ways to do what wanted to do, which is to dress women up, and here I am today,
yeah.
yeah, as a stylist and a designer dressing women up. So, yeah, the very thing she feared, I'm sorry, she just couldn't stop it. It was inevitable, and it's been the most fulfilling and rewarding experience for me.
Yeah. And and that's what I also want to get into it, right? Because I feel like what Lil Nas did, like you said at the beginning, right?
Yeah,
Lil Nas, what he did, for me personally, is the sense of freeing himself, like you said at the
sure.
beginning, freeing himself of all, the shackles of,
Yeah.
toxic masculinity.
Mhm.
I would say pervasive religion. I would say, I don't know if it makes sense, right? Just like that religion that just on
Oh,
you all
it's
the time.
quite pervasive. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, right? And I think what happened, when he did that, like he freed himself up. Because I still remember when he had a discussion with Kevin Hart about being a black gay man and how
Right.
demeaning and how belittling they were talking to him, and this speaks again to the larger black gay men, especially black gay effeminate men, right? I would
Right.
say it's this when I saw the video, I mean, I saw the video and there were things I was looking at and I was like, oh, like, oh dear. And just at the beginning, when you understand, oh, he's in the Garden of Eden, oh, there's
Eden,
the
right?
snake,
Yeah.
there's the like all those things that went through, and I was like, oh, this is disturbing. This is,
Yeah.
I like, what are you doing?
But
Like,
the fact that we responded to it in such a visceral way, because as I said to you,
yeah,
I had to pick up my jaw off the ground multiple times through watching
yeah,
the video. Um, but the fact that we had such a visceral reaction to it, I think for me, what that felt like was those many times that I'd stay up late at night doing my homework and somehow switch
yeah,
on odds on HBO.
yes,
Um, or any of those shows, and just the very fear of my mother waking up to go get water from the kitchen and seeing me watch that on TV, or on occasion something that skewed homosexual coming on cable TV, and me watching TV with my mother and my aunt, and their visceral reaction to, like, what is this, what kind, just like the anger towards
yes,
it. Me as a child sitting there listening and witnessing that made me scared, and I
yeah,
think seeing that, I felt afraid for myself. Because what happens is Christian folks, and they're not aware of how violent they are, they rise up and they take to the podium with their harmful rhetoric and violent sermons, and they get heated.
yes,
They come launching all of these attacks. And again, it's just like when I saw it, I thought, here we go again. There is going to be a rise of of the hate, and I'm going to be reminded and re-traumatized of how much I am disliked in this world. Like
yes,
most days I like to just exist in the bubble and work on my healing, do my own little self-care and tiptoe around my interactions with folks. Like I really do have serious anxiety about being in certain spaces where there are a lot of men and
Yeah,
being in certain spaces where there are a lot of Christians. I have friends from high school on Facebook, which I had to come off because everybody's Facebook headline is "Child of God, glory to God," and I immediately I go I should feel safe with these folks, but I don't. I see
yeah.
that I'm okay. I'm not sure if I should accept your friend request because if you see me and how I'm presenting myself and how I'm being, you're probably going to come to me and just seeing their daily posts and their scriptures and re-traumatizing. And I
It's
think that was my fear when I saw the video. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to drum up a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to start realizing who's really my friend and who's really not. You know?
yeah. And I think you know, right. It's what you're saying is absolutely true, right? Because the violence,
Hmm.
they are not aware of that violence, right? And so whenever I would hear them talk about, oh, he needs Jesus in his life, who, what is going to go to hell, who, oh my God, he's playing with, the
The devil.
devil, and the devil is right here and everything. And then sometimes it's, I'm just like, you guys were kind of the version of the devil. Because, like,
That's why I said darkness. They represent darkness and they're completely unaware of it.
like it's like they're
Yeah,
oblivious about
oblivious.
it.
Yeah.
They don't see it. Like the psychological trauma that sometimes I go through, and I think about, like, I was lucky that it wasn't in my household, but when I
Hmm.
would get out of my household, that is where I would feel, the constant, this is evil, this is bad, you're gonna go
Hmm.
to hell.
I'm
Whenever I
under
go to
surveillance.
Oh my God, I would go to church and I would, read, the scriptures, at my schools, and it was just, there's like this constant, and you just like
Yeah,
everything.
the scriptures were used almost as whips. That's what
As
they use the
whips.
scriptures as. They use them as whips and they use them to their own advantage. And again, very similar to how they use the scriptures to control in the period during the periods of enslavement. They
Yes,
use it as a whip. And so this for me, when I saw the video again, just that's what I felt was coming. Here they go cracking their whips again.
yes,
And I thought we were beyond this. I was hoping we were beyond this. And it's just such a burden to bear being black and queer. And I
yes,
question, why would you think anybody would choose this? To wake up every day subjecting themselves to your hate and your violence. If we genuinely could be something else, we would. I'm still struggling with loving me
yes,
because I some days I feel like I just wish I was normal. And then I question that, but wait, who says I'm abnormal?
yes,
Where does that narrative come from? And perhaps that's the thing that needs to be uprooted.
yeah,
So there are layers to it, but I wanted to share this joke with you in terms of when I kind of really recognized that something was wrong with me was when I went to my first church camp. And I think I was in the height of my puberty.
yeah,
And of course, everything is going haywire. It was my first time being in a dorm with a whole bunch of guys.
mm,
So my hormone is raging because I'm looking at all of them and they're developing bodies. And I'm just like, oh my God, why would I do this to myself? And I'm like, Lord Jesus, let me just say my Bible verses and just go. And so every time we'd have our mass at nighttime and everybody's getting up and they're praising God, I'm like, hallelujah, hallelujah. And I'm like, save me, God, save me. Because I'm surrounded by all these men and I don't know what to do
yeah,
with myself. And then of course, when I saw the shower situation at the camp, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I never showered fully naked. I showered with my underwear on
mm,
because you could literally see everybody. And there's one guy at camp, I'll never forget him. He was one of the he was one of the older teens. I think I was preteen at that time. And he was just standing there drying himself and talking to me naked. And the whole time I'm just like, stay down, because I realized that I was being aroused and I could
yeah,
not allow that to happen to me with my towel around me. And this is happening at a church camp, and every day we're going there. And we're praying. And I'm just like, what am I doing here? Because
Yeah.
the devil is tormenting me. I, to be at a place where I've set myself free of that and realize that no, sir, you are quite fine. You just happen to be gay, and that's okay. Or in my
Yeah.
case, I guess more bisexual, because I did have, oh, trust me, I had girlfriends in preschool that
Yes.
I'd my juice box for, and then my girlfriend would bring me cereal, but that's how it would go. The sexual arousal, though, I could have relationships with girls, and which I did, but in terms of that intense sexual arousal, I had never experienced that before I saw that guy. I'm like, what is this? This is new to me, and I don't know what to do with it, and I need to be rid of this. And so whenever they did the altar call at camp, and they asked you to come up, I was the first to go up there, because I'm like, I need to be delivered. And they laid hands on me, and my hand is up. I'm like, hallelujah, hallelujah, crying the whole
Yeah.
word, because I'm like, please save me. I don't want to go to hell.
Yeah. It's like
Exhausting and traumatic.
it's traumatic because, like, right now, the way we talk about it, the way we kind of laugh about it, but it's kind of sad when you think
It's
about it,
very,
because it's
yeah.
it's ca- I'm saying kind of, it is sad. It's
Hmm.
very sad, like you said. It's very sad because I that's why when I was looking at the backlash, and now I wrote this question. I'm just like, my question was, do you think the backlash he's receiving justified, right? And
Hmm.
then I said, depending. Then now I'm like looking at it. I'm saying, depending on where you stand in this conversation, right? If you are, God fearing Christian who truly believes that homosexuality is a sin,
Fundamentalist Christian. Yep.
yeah, then of course you are going to say this is well received, right?
Uh,
But then it just shows that you are looking the story through your reality and your
mhm.
reality only, so which makes it hard for you to then look at the realities of a
To even
black
have a
person.
conversation about, yeah, about the
Yeah.
bigger picture here.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, it's so interesting when you think about just this idea of the backlash, because if they're to be really honest with themselves, their issue is not so much it goes beyond the religious
Mm.
insignia or symbolism that existed within the video. It goes beyond that. I think what it did was that it gave them license to spew their hate.
There you go.
It was like, okay, now because if he was doing his thing on his own, grinding on just an average person, average model, they would scoff at it. But then how dare you grind on the devil,
Yeah.
a symbol of the devil. Now they have grounds to say, aha, you are attacking my religion and my beliefs, when really, come on.
Mm.
Why are you upset about a gay man grinding on the devil? Let's really question that. He's not grinding on Jesus. He's grinding on the devil, the thing that you don't like. And the two things you don't like are in cahoots with each other. Therefore, what is the real problem?
Yes.
Where is the real issue here? Because you don't worship the devil, you worship Jesus Christ and the Holy Trinity. Therefore, had he done that to Jesus, I would be like, okay, that's crossing the line, slightly sacrilegious, offensive to another person's religion, but he's grinding on the devil.
Yeah.
Okay, you said to us that we are doomed to hell, then we're going to kiki down there, and and you should therefore look at it and be like, yeah, that's what you think hell is going to be. Yeah, enjoy yourself, as long as you stay down there and we stay. Like, that should be the conversation, and just
Yeah.
let it be. So I don't understand it, but the reason they're all up in arms about it is because it borders on this whole, well, more than borders, it really just obliterates this idea and this notion of Christianity, and brings to the forefront in a very real way what we go through and what
Yes.
we're subjected to. And they don't want to confront that, and
Yes.
so they're kicking and screaming. again sounds very familiar to what happened last year when everybody was suddenly, responding to Target being looted, but not up in arms about the fact that a black man's life, multiple black folks,
Yeah,
black men and women, were murdered
yeah,
senseless.
yeah.
They're not up in arms about that, but they're up in arms about the things they worship.
Your
And
worship.
so it begs the question that really, what are you worshiping? Because you seem to be worshiping the very thing that, and I've had to have this very conversation with my mother because she used to always say to me, Satan, Satan, the devil, you're possessed. And I'm just like, okay, the fact that you call that being's name so often, perhaps that's who you really are wrapped up with. Perhaps that's
Yeah.
who you're really wrapped up with. Because if you're pulling reference from Jesus, it
Mm,
would be words of love. If you
yes.
are really pulling reference from Jesus, it would be words of love. But you're not pulling reference from Jesus. You're pulling reference from from books that were edited by men long before us as a means of controlling us. It's called the King James version, which is the favorite that they love to use.
Yeah.
That was edited and put together by men with a particular focus and an idea.
Yes.
Just leaving it there.
Yeah.
Because it's not a conversation I think most of them are ready to have.
I'm ready to have. Yeah. So we're reaching the end of our conversation. Honestly, I think I think it's such an important conversation to have, and I think when we have this kind of conversation, I would like to queer Black individuals to listen to it, and straight, I would say, Black people, and any straight people,
Right.
white, Black, to listen to it, because I do believe that in order to understand why Lil Nas did what he did, you also have to understand the reality of what queer Black
Mhm.
individuals go through for them to do the things you guys are vehemently against.
Yeah.
Because once you let yourself understand that, like,
Thank you. Which is why when you see
yeah,
when you get upset about looting, are you focusing on what is being destroyed? Or are you focusing on what brought the people to that boiling
there we
point?
yeah, you have to understand that, right? Because if you just look at the consequence, but you don't understand what happened to get to that consequence, then you're
Mhm.
not really having a full spectrum of what is going on with people, right?
The
Because I always
conversation
listen to all those
decided.
people. Yeah, I always listen to them and how they talk about, we don't want the children to live to watch this. We That's another conversation. Like, we'll talk about this another time. But yeah, there's like all those things. If you don't understand why it came up, then in a way you don't understand the privilege
Yeah.
you have, you know. And yeah, I think it's thank you, Damon, for having the conversation with me.
Thank you for inviting me, of course. It's
This is
always
it.
a pleasure. I mean,
Uh,
I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel like I'm not crazy because there's never a time where we don't really agree because we're experiencing this world in the same way, and
yeah,
we're coming from similar backgrounds.
yes,
So thank you.
no pleasure. So guys, thank you for listening to us, for watching us. This is the end of the video. If you like what you saw, like, comment, and subscribe, and share so people can listen to another version of this whole discussion, right? And yeah, so thank you so much, guys. So I
Thank
say
you,
bye.
everyone.
So
Bye.
have a good morning, evening, wherever you guys, and bye.
Ciao.
I think how to end this.